I was thinking recently and realized that I never had a white friend. Not one. Like as long as I can remember. I'm talking childhood, adolescence, adulthood. It doesn't even make sense that I haven't. I was raised around them in every phase of my life. I'm an Air Force kid, lived in Great Britain in middle school, and all over the US as a child, like more states than I can actually remember. So the constant moving and the fact that I don't really have a city I feel attached to as a hometown might be relevant, but I don't really see how. I've had white acquaintances and people I'm fond of at work. It just never progressed to something real. For my whole life, I was raised with a brother who that doesn't apply to. He's had friends or buddies. White people prefer the word buddy for some reason, of all races. And I want to be clear that I'm not knocking him for that or implying that it's a bad thing for some reason. We're just different. In college, we split in very different directions. And we went to different colleges. And my direction was extremely black, despite the fact that I went to a PWI. Luckily, that PWI was in the middle of Atlanta, so it made it easy. I pledged a historically black fraternity, which I famously denounced last year in the most popular independently produced video on the topic, while he pledged a mixed race engineering fraternity. I'd say that on the whole, he made the better decision there. Naturally, the fact that I'm a black YouTube American with a substantial and rapidly growing audience means most of that audience has to be white by default. If that applies to you, I'm glad you're here, and I don't hate you. I gotta be clear about that, especially on here, since people will try to twist my words. I brought up my relationship to whiteness as a metaphor. I recently watched a stream by FD where he was talking about the concept of a class traitor. And that's essentially what I've started to feel like. Somebody who came from a majority white environment growing up with, enough black people to solidify my identity, but ultimately turns into somebody who distances themselves from those concepts of whiteness and what that says about your blackness. In short, I'm radicalized. The discomfort, frustration, and annoyance I feel around white people sometimes has little to do with the merits of an individual white person. Y'all are an amorphous group of European immigrant colonists who use your one homogenous feature, your skin color, as an identifier that helps maintain one of the two pillars the United States has been built on: white supremacy, with the other one being capitalism. All that being said, I was raised in primarily white schools, primarily white neighborhoods, and worked in almost entirely white companies for my entire life. I never felt comfortable enough to go to happy hours or hang out after work or try to genuinely forge friendships with y'all due to the microaggressions and collective ignorance I felt every day. A specific incident I recall from one of my many digital advertising agency jobs in my late 20s helps put this into perspective. My supervisor and all the coworkers on my team were white, and we had meetings every week about strategy, metrics, and anything else that matters when you're trying to get thousands of people to buy shit. Sometimes there'd be an icebreaker, right? One of these meetings started with a 90s quiz. My supervisor was real proud of it. She designed it herself. The slideshow was on screen when I walked in the conference room, and the first thing I noticed was all the little cartoon characters used to represent the 90s. White people in 90s attire, a figure similar to Bill Clinton playing the sax, a Nintendo 64, Doug, all acceptable avatars from my childhood. One of them stood out to me though: an abstract black cartoon of a blood gang member throwing up the signature hand sign. Before one of y'all suggests it was a bad attempt at putting Tupac on there, I wasn't confused. That nigga's a blood. She starts asking us milk toast ass questions like details about the cast of Friends, a truly unfunny sitcom, by the way. And the whole time I'm just sitting here like, did this motherfucker really put a blood on the title screen? As if that wasn't enough, not a single aspect of black culture made it into that slideshow. Out of like 10 questions, I think the only black character that made the cut was Lisa Turtle from Saved by the Bell. So I guess the Fresh Prince, Martin, Living Single, Family Matters, Static Shock, Green Lantern, every rapper, every R&B artist, and every other pop culture moment we created simply didn't exist. Y'all might think I'm putting too much weight on a silly quiz, but I guarantee you that speaks to your privilege, not my exaggeration. Beyond the microaggressions, the most annoying part of having to deal with white people in every aspect of public life in America is that they don't even have to consider us. We're not even a part of their decision making process. That's a microcosm of what it's like being black in a white supremacist country. Even the non racist, mostly liberal whites you end up working with in major cities end up doing racist shit as a joke or due to stereotypes they wouldn't even be able to identify if you pressed them on it. We're an inconvenient afterthought to them. My point is that everyone with my background, mostly suburban, fully integrated with white people for decades, usually turns out roughly the same as far as their politics. Black capitalist respectability that emphasizes assimilation and cooperation with white power structures. In other terms, the Oprah Cosby pipeline. In terms younger generations can more easily grasp, the Beyonce Tyler Perry pipeline. I'm not supposed to challenge the Democrat Party. I'm supposed to help fund them, stand behind them, and serve up my audience to serve their commercial and political ends. I'm not supposed to bring up the fact that even the Democrats we agree with on certain big ticket issues like immigration, abortion access, and civil rights for queer people also take hundreds of thousands in APAC funding while watering down a genocide or supporting the oil and gas industry's devastation of our natural resources, or big tech's devastation of our natural resources. Let me take y'all behind the scenes. When I get access to interview a politician, I'm supposed to ask pre-screened questions. And if I don't submit those questions to get them approved beforehand, they won't talk to me. I got a specific story for this too. Last year, I was approached by a political agency I work with on some of my videos. They were going to fly me out to DC to have a conversation with Hakeem Jeffries, who has served as minority leader of the House for a few years now. If y'all know anything about Jeffries, I'm sure a bunch of aggressive questions popped into your head, like, what the hell is the plan to fight all this authoritarianism? Why is your party so cozy with Israel? When are y'all going to stop suppressing the rapidly growing leftist factions of your party? You know, fun shit like that. I was like, look, I'm an investigative journalist. I'm going to have some hard questions for him. So if he's open to that, let's do it. I did not hear back. Not even saying I fully learned my lesson that time. I still went on to accept an opportunity to discuss the history of cooperation between the Black and Jewish communities with Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. and Avi Dresner last year. An interview that I later realized was a setup from the outset to co-opt my audience into chilling out about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. We were contractually obligated to drop it in Black History Month, which is pretty flagrant. This is the byproduct of the intersection of capitalism, black respectability politics, and art. In my opinion, that intersection always results in compromises, and there are no exceptions. I don't have a desire to interrupt my stories to sell y'all shit. I don't want to have to cleverly design a question about a genocide to reference the Holocaust instead of just saying the word genocide on camera. I don't want to smile and nod at things I don't necessarily agree with, depending on my fact checking afterwards to catch all the bullshit. Every move I've made in my YouTube journey has been a straight line towards a greater amount of ownership and control over the things I make. And even though I've made mistakes and stumbled at times, I'm closer to that now than I ever have been. I want to interview people with real freedom, not a facade of freedom dictated by clients' agendas and an algorithm that knows me for scammer exposés. That's what led me to create this entire channel, a place where facts take precedence, just like the deep dive series on my main channel. This sounds like an outro, but it's more like a slight detour. I got more shit to get off my chest. Grade school never taught me about the radical leftist politics of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It definitely never brought up the deep nuances within the rapidly evolving ideologies of Malcolm X towards the end of his life. Kwame Ture, Fred Hampton, Assata Shakur, Angela Davis, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, none of these people were even footnotes in grade school. Even my African American history course in college didn't really expose me to any real radical figures or revolutionary political ideas. Could I have sought that information out myself? Of course I could have, but nothing told me it was necessary. You can survive and thrive in America without understanding anything about the revolutionary black tradition. You can make money as a YouTuber without engaging in anything that challenges moderate Democrats on anything worth discussing. I've made six figures a year for the past 2 years, with most of that coming from YouTube. There was a 6 month period where I went back to a full time job, but since then, I've been rolling pretty smoothly. There's a direct line from my viewers' support, your support, to that revenue. There's also a significant portion of it that came from political agencies that allowed me to travel to DC and elsewhere, get time with politicians, and get real answers to some of my pressing questions. I made sure I only agreed to projects I was passionate about: maternal mortality, insider trading, trans rights, and fighting the Trump administration's agenda. I still stand by all of that work, but there's a couple of things that have always haunted me. First happened last year when I linked up with over a dozen of the short form content creators y'all might recognize from Instagram and TikTok in a content house over the course of 2 days here in Atlanta. Not only was I the only long form filmmaker in the room, but there was a clear difference between my place on the political spectrum and theirs. There was a Kamala cutout in the house, campaign buttons, hats, and we even attended a Kamala rally with a bunch of black entertainers there. Since it was Michelle Obama behind it, they couldn't really explicitly mention who they were supporting, but it was pretty obvious. I never felt comfortable endorsing Kamala publicly. Even though I knew I had the vote for her, if the alternative was enabling another Trump term, I still couldn't bring myself to rock the hats. Of course, that happened anyway, as far as her losing, but her vapid response to the genocide in Palestine and open support of the Biden administration's pro Israel policies, just as an example, were unacceptable. Like, I can't rock your merch when you're just more of the same shit I disliked from Obama's administration, bruh. Realizing I couldn't openly support the Democrat Party anymore was a pivotal moment. Second thing that haunts me is best summed up by one of y'all's comments. Before creating this channel, I asked y'all if I should keep making political content at all. One response basically said that they were drawn to my scammer exposés because of how blunt, uncompromising, and comedic they were. They said they didn't feel that same bluntness and raw honesty from some of my political work. Hey, when you're right, you're right. And that person was right. I've always pushed the limit of what I can get away with when I'm asking those questions, but I always had to exist within these predefined walls. It's an awkward balance to strike when your career is on the line. It doesn't help that the politicians' aides and support staff are staring at you while you talk to this person. In my continuing effort to self-reflect as my collective audience gets bigger and bigger across these channels, I have opportunities every day to reevaluate the approach I'm taking towards getting my message out. I've experimented along this journey. My first approach in interviews was to keep it cordial and friendly, only pushing back on things I saw as particularly flagrant or incorrect. Next, I adapted to publishing fact-checking videos after the interviews, no matter what tone I took in the interview itself. I'm kind of still there because I genuinely don't enjoy making people uncomfortable in person. But what I hope to do here is to emerge as a filmmaker who puts the entirety of a given issue in front of the viewer, not just the narrow focus requested by the powers that be. The only way we're going to pull that off is if you support, as I'm also committing to zero corporate ad reads on this channel. I'm depending on your views and engagement to compel politicians and important reps and CEOs and whoever else I talk to appear here and give us the real answers we deserve. Look at this as more than a channel welcome video. It's more like a manifesto. I won't get there overnight, but I'm trying my best to set a new standard for political discourse based on hard facts, not celebrity worship. I'm not going to come out the gate perfect. This is always a work in progress. My first steps will absolutely still be experimentation with new formats. I need y'all to tell me what I can improve. My commitment to you is a promise that I'll listen and adapt as necessary. Power to the people.